Hey, English 112, Miss Brewer here for your week 1 part 2 video lecture. So this week you guys are going to participate in a discussion forum. So I wanted to make sure to take some time to talk about expectations for those. You also will read your part 2 poetry assignment, and these poems you're going to find are getting a little more applicable to modern day, even though all of them are applicable to modern day. Remember that you are reading these poems with the lens of looking at social issues, okay? So all of the poems that we are reading in this course have social issues that they're addressing that we still deal with today. And essentially you're going to be analyzing the poems for a common theme. You will be required to utilize 3 total poems. You have another week's worth of poetry, so just be aware of that. So again, as you read the poems, and you are expected to read all 5 of the poems, after you've read all 5 of the poems, then you will participate in first probably your journal 3, where you're choosing 2 poems from this week to respond to. After you've completed journal 3, then you want to get into the discussion forum, okay? And what you're going to do this week, the discussion forum is just going to take place in a very short period of time. Next week it'll be spread over both parts of the week, so I'll get to that next week. But this week you're going to address the poetry from week 1 and week 2, okay? And you're selecting a poem from week 1 and a poem from week 2 to discuss in the forum, okay? You will need to post an initial reply. Your initial reply is to be anywhere from 300 to 500 words. And then your replies to your peers, and you need to have 2 peer replies, should be a minimum of 150 words. Okay, so make sure that you're paying attention to word count. And the way that we make sure that we are meeting our word count requirements is you always be sure to refer back to the literature. So while you can have this conversation and you can, personally identify with the poems and give examples from your life, you always need to go back to the poetry. So that's super important. So if you open up the page Poetry Discussion Responses for this week, this is a guide for you to complete your initial reply, okay? So your very initial thing when you create your thread and you write your initial response, use this page to create that response. So just talk about whether or not you were intrigued, if it met your expectations of the title, was there anything interesting about structure or form? And you don't have to answer every single question. These are to guide you, so you don't have to be like, no, I wasn't intrigued. Yes, it did meet my expectation, okay? You need to elaborate a little bit on those things. Of course, I want to know your gut reaction and mood or tone. Definitely look into connections, and you can actually make connections between the 2 poems you choose to talk about if you want, all right? But then also current cultural connections, pop connections like music or film or television, okay, books, anything like that. And finally, that so what, which we went over a little bit and is in your poetry analysis PowerPoint, is super important when it comes to coming to your literary analysis. You will be identifying a common theme from all 3 sections of poetry, okay? So it's really important that you write a theme statement. And a theme statement is not one word. So you wouldn't say something like, the theme of this is racism, okay? That's not a thing. I mean, racism is a thing, but racism is not a theme statement. A theme statement is, what is your author saying about racism or whatever, okay? What are they saying about the world? And it's not what you're saying, it's what the author is saying, okay? So that's really important. So if you think the theme of the poem is, that rights are not really available or not equal throughout the United States, okay, then great, and then pull some lines that back that up. So that's what we're looking for with that theme statement, okay? So that poetry discussion response, it's super important that you're writing 300 to 500 words. You need to be quoting the poem. It says it straight there, quote the poem, all right, in your initial reply. And so you are going to be writing about 2 poems, okay? So it shouldn't be hard to meet the word count requirement for your initial reply, all right? After you do your initial reply, after you do it, then go and comment on 2 of your peers. It's really helpful to you if you go and comment on some analysis of poems that you didn't write about, okay? So that you're getting involved in all of the poetry and kind of understanding all of it. So essentially what you're doing for the second part of the week, that everything will be due Sunday, you're doing your journal 3, and you're doing the discussion forum. Okay, so that's what's due Sunday for this week. And there are scholarly articles available for you for this week's poems. So if you really liked Caged Bird, then you may choose one of the Maya Angelou articles to read. Or if you liked Mullen's poem or June Jordan's poem, there's not a scholarly article for every poem, so just be aware of that. But this is just to kind of give you an idea, because you will be using scholarly articles when you do your literary analysis, and you're allowed to use the ones that I've provided for you if you need to. So basically what you're going to be doing here is just kind of reading these next 5 poems, completing the journal, and participating in the discussion forum. And the discussion forum, it's really important that you pick one from week 1 and one from week 2, or part 1, part 2, okay? Because normally in a full-length class you would have a forum for each part, but we're so fast that we're going to combine that, okay? If you guys have any questions about that, please feel free to shoot me an email or jump into a virtual office session. And you will find that week 2 opens up generally near the end of week 1. So feel free to kind of start moving at your pace if you're moving quickly. All right. Hopefully you guys enjoy some of these articles. I do want to warn you that there is some trigger stuff here. So I believe it is a poem about my rights. Just be aware that that can be a little triggering if you've ever been a victim of assault or anything like that. And if that's the case for you and you choose to skip that poem, that's totally fine. Just I wouldn't reply to other people about that poem if that's the case, okay? So again, if you guys have questions, just shoot me an email. And I hope you guys enjoy this poetry.